Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 budget meeting of the Bishop's Forest Trust. I'm calling the meeting to order. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded, and you will be able to see it again if you like. There's a lot of material to cover, and much of it is frankly numerical, so you may find that you have questions as we go along. Please take note of them, and we'll do our best to answer them immediately following the presentation. And so it's 6 o'clock. Let's get started. Just by way of introduction, my name is Mark Newton. I'm the vice chairman, and I'll be hosting tonight's meeting. Joan Ruver, the current chair, is recovering from a medical procedure. We wish her the best. She couldn't make it this evening. Joining us on the call is Roy Landon, our treasurer, Glenn Wolfsit, our secretary, Bob Farrell, chair of the building committee, Joe Stewart, chair landscape committee, Bonnie Regelman, board communications, Marianne from Thayer Associates, welcome Marianne, and Alyssa, our property manager. First, I'd like to say thank you to everyone, board, staff, and volunteers who worked so hard on behalf of all of us to put this together. I'd especially like to call out Marianne from Thayer, who's joining us tonight, obviously. Alyssa here at BF, who does so much on all our behalf every day, along with Ed and Scott. And Roy Landon, who did the lion's share of putting these numbers together. So thank you very much for that. The agenda this evening includes a little bit of an overview, not much, and then a look at where we are financially and how it looks like the next year will play out. The presentation should last maybe half an hour. Please note your questions, as I mentioned before, and you can submit your questions using the chat function while the presentation is going on. Alyssa will keep track of those, and they will be read at the conclusion of the presentation, or you can raise your hand using the Zoom function at the bottom of the screen when we are taking questions at the end, and Alyssa will unmute you to ask your question. So let's start off. On page 4 here, we have the mission statement. This was put together by a prior board with community input. Actually, I was around back then. The board wrote one up, and then we got a better one from the community. So we actually used that. Mission statements are often misunderstood. Some people might even ask, why should we bother having one anyway? But a thoughtful mission statement is actually useful. It helps define what makes Bishop's Forest the wonderful place that it is. And in hard times, we use it to prioritize spending on the most important things. In ordinary times, we use it as something to try to live up to as a board and a community. So in short, it actually is useful all the time. I'd like to just take a minute and highlight a few things from it that I found useful in working through this budget, and you might find them as well. The first one is it says sustainable use and attractiveness. If you just look around you, as many of us do every day, you'll find many examples over the last few years of upgrading our community in every single village now. The second thing is safe places to live and use. Ditto. Every single village has been included. Roofs, siding, decks, you name it. And we'll be going into, sort of the near future as we go through the presentation, but every village has been included in the upgrades, and it's noticeable. Amenities. A couple years ago, we did the tennis court refurbishment, which I've used many, many times. The pool and hot tub have also been upgraded. The hot tub was closed for a little while, so it could be completely reworked, and it's lovely now. If you go by the pool, you'll notice people sawing and tapping away on blocks. So we're getting a brand new pool deck around the pool and around the pavilion. And the last thing I'd say is resident participation. There are quite a number of people in our community that make our lives better. On the committees are always open to people who want to do something and want to help. And also there are occasions when the board asks for volunteers, in particular when we think we need some expertise. I mean, the board is just the people who volunteer here. They have their own expertise from their own lives and careers, but it doesn't always match what we might need in the community. And so sometimes we go out and we look for people who know more than we do. The landscape contract is a recent example. When we do the road soon, we hope to update the communication infrastructure at the same time. So it's more than the road. And we could use some help there as Alyssa pointed out in an earlier missive. So that's it. Maybe we can just move on straight into it, into the financial presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. This slide, your financial forecast for 2025, your fiscal year ends December 31st. And we based all of these forecasts off of September 30th, which was your latest reporting period. Your operating revenue that you've generated, $2.6 million, slightly ahead of budget by about $24,000. Your operating expenses that we subcategorize right below that, under budget about $33,000, which is to the good. And we forecast your operating surplus at December 31st to be approximately $45,000 to $70,000. And then we bump over to your reserve fund. You've collected $1.6 million. Your regular reserve common area fees on budget, $883,000. You have that ongoing special assessment, which is up shortly. I can't believe how fast that went by. Plus interest you earn in the bank, $719,000. Under budget by about $81,000. And actually in March, when the special assessment concludes, that $81,000 is zero. You're going to collect what you assessed. It's just a function of the people that paid ahead and like that. So that's why we see that $81,000. Your reserve fund spending, $1.2 million. Under budget, $361,000. Again, good. Your forecasted reserve fund balance at December 31st, $2.3 million. Over budget, approximately $280,000. So it's a very positive year. Your operating budget, 2026, your mailing will go out on Monday from our office in Cambridge. Your operating fees for 2026 are going to see an approximate 6.92% fee increase. Driven primarily in large part to your reserve fund contribution. It's going to go up by about $71,000 or 8% next year. Also, to alleviate an even higher increase, your increase is not high, but I do say, an additional increase. We're going to apply $30,000 from this year's operating surplus, and you do carry a healthy operating surplus. We're just going to carry it forward into next year. And that helps to keep the fees lower. We're increasing other revenue by about $38,000, and that's revenue that you generate from Bishop's Forest 2 and your easement agreement that Rory works on every year. We are increasing your operating expenses by about 8.2%. And again, we subcategorize general admin, landscaping and snow, insurance, depreciation now that you've purchased a new truck, and income tax expense. The subtotal of all of those operating expenses is driving about 8.2%. And I believe next slide, this pie chart, we like to show you where the majority of your funds are distributed. You can tell by this pie chart, your reserve contribution is about 34%. And we take it all the way down to just general admin, about 4%. And I believe there's one more slide. Yes, your historical fee increase. We like to show you a 5-year history of what your fees have done. Doing the quick math, 5 years, you probably averaged about a 4.5% fee increase over 5 years. Next year, you're going to see 6.92%. And again, it's driven in large part to your planned reserve funding for 2026. And I believe that is the last financial slide. I love working with the board. I love working with Roy. He makes my job easy. So I'll be here until the end of the meeting for any questions.
All right. Thanks, Marianne.
Sure.
So I just want to begin the reserve fund segment of the presentation with a topic which is a significant change to the upcoming reserve study refresh and will impact the future planning at Bishop's Forest. So for a little history regarding the exterior maintenance of the buildings at Bishop's Forest. Bishop's Forest began removing and replacing the original cedar siding, which I will be referring to as Gen 1 siding, in the early 2000s due to siding conditions in peeling paint. So the initial project was to completely remove and replace all siding on an entire building, a single building. This project was completed on 12 buildings, which were in 3 villages, Overlook, Woodbury, and Morningside. Each had Overlook had 2 buildings, Woodbury had 4, Morningside had 6. So the replacement siding was a high-grade, clear vertical grain red cedar siding, or CVG. The Gen 1 siding was also cedar, but a more rustic cut, which had more knots and a rougher surface. So beginning in 2003, after those buildings were completed, a new plan was put in place to remove and replace approximately 20% of Gen 1 siding per building in each village on a 6-year cycle. So I believe the change was driven by the high costs associated with the complete removal and replacement, which the board at the time felt was not sustainable. I don't know that for a fact, but if I was on the board, I would have made the same decision. So Bishop's Forest included this 6-year replacement model in the 2022 reserve study without interruption for the next 30 years. So we just assumed we would just continue all of the prior practices from the early 2000s. When the board was working with Advanced Reserve Solutions, the reserve consultants that Bishop's Forest hired in 2022 to prepare the reserve plan, we just didn't contemplate a change in this 6-year remove and replace cycle. And the assumptions moving forward is that it would just continue for the next 30 years. Beginning at the start of 2025, the building committee was presented by Prime Touch, and Prime Touch is our construction contractor, an analysis of the remaining Gen 1 siding on buildings in Arborview and Overlook. This gave us incredible insight into how to allocate resources between the 2 villages. The building committee then asked Prime Touch for the same analysis for all remaining villages in Bishop's Forest. A study was conducted by Prime Touch in the fall of 2025 to assess all villages to determine the amount of Gen 1 siding that remains in each village. The board, along with Prime Touch, researched the useful life of CVG, and based on the quality of the siding in our annual maintenance program, it's estimated that the current siding has a life between 40 to 60 years in total. So based on these findings, the reserve spending presented in this presentation includes the cost to replace all remaining Gen 1 siding starting in 2026 to 2031. The net result is an estimated savings of approximately $325,000 by 2031. At that point, Bishop's Forest will suspend the siding replacement project beginning in 2032. So we would have continued normally, but we are going to suspend that because we will have replaced all of the Gen 1 siding. We'll have second generation siding on the buildings, and we will begin a deck replacement project, which is really at this point undefined. So we need to spend time on that, which we will do with working on the reserve study. What will not be suspended in the 6-year cycle are the spot repairs, cleaning, and painting of all siding in the villages. This maintenance is key to extending the life of the cedar siding. So with that, I'm just going to jump into the numbers. As Mark said, we have a lot of numbers. So I want to talk about the 5-year reserve plan, but mostly I'd like to just review accomplishments for 2025 and look forward to 2026. So the 2025 accomplishments, front porch project complete. A huge accomplishment for 2025 was to finish the removal and replacement of all front porches in the complex. This project was initially planned to be completed over 5 years. The board was able to accelerate the completion due to a significant number of unit owners who paid upfront the entire amount of the capital assessment levied at the end of 2022. The increase in cash allowed the board to make decisions which would not have been possible if this influx of cash was not on hand. So it was an enormous project. We're happy that we completed it. I'd just like to thank Alyssa and the building committee that spent significant amount of time on issues and unit owner requests as the work continued. This was the largest expenditure in 2025 at $604,000. The total project cost $1.3 million. In 2025, we also did work on Arborview and Overlook. It was a normal 6-year cycle, but conducted with much more insight given the Gen 1 siding analysis. So we worked on the siding, we painted, and we did deck refurbishment. The erosion projects were completed. We added berms throughout the community to deal with the erosion issues that had surfaced within the last couple of years. This was becoming a big problem, the berms seem to be in all of the right places. There are possibly some that will come up, and we'll take care of those. The Bishop's Forest Drive entry fence was installed. Pool paver replacement project is underway. All pavers surrounding the pool are being replaced and steps being upgraded to granite. So I'd suggest if you haven't taken a look at the pool, stop by and take a look at it. It's really looking great. The cement walkway repair project was started in 2025. A complete inventory of walkways in the complex was completed and triaged based on condition. All walkways rated C's, D's, and F's have been replaced or repaired based on their condition. And lastly, the retaining wall project will be started. A few wooden rail retaining walls have been targeted for replacement in 2025. They could possibly fall into 2026 since the same vendor working on the pool will also be repairing the walls. So needless to say, we get a busy year in 2025. So let's look forward to 2026 projects. We will be tackling the reserve study refresh. I'll talk about that later on in the presentation. We'll be starting our Gen 1 siding replacement project, starting with Wayside. We'll be doing siding replacement, painting, and deck refurbishment. So when Prime Touch leaves Wayside next year, all Gen 1 siding will have been removed as we begin this project. Bishop's Forest Drive and Overlook repavement. This is the biggest project planned for 2026. The building committee is in the process of receiving bids and putting together plans. I don't have specific timing, but the community, including Bishop's Forest too, will be kept informed as planning and timing solidify. Bridge repairs and walkway replacement. This project was delayed from 2025, but we're making progress. A structural engineer has been engaged, and the plans are to do some repair work on the underside of the bridge. None of the repairs deal with any structural integrity issues of the bridge walkway. They just deal with some brackets that have rusted. Then we're going to rip up all the existing walkway and railing and replace it with a composite walkway. What we'll do with the railings is still in discussion, so I don't have details on that. And lastly, we have a number of infrastructure things that we continue to work on: the retaining walls, as I had mentioned earlier, fences, concrete walkways, and main breakers. All of those will continue to be worked on in 2026. So I find it very instructive to look at what changed from a financial perspective from one plan to the next. I think it gives a different perspective on what happened and allows us to see details that aren't obvious when just looking at the new plan. So I've identified items by circling the ones that stand out. So under roads and parking, we accelerated the repavement of Overlook to mobilize, want to minimize community disruption. So you'll notice a shift in spending from 2027 into 2026. The board felt that this made sense since we are mobilizing for the main road, and we'll get better pricing and reduce disruption for the project just once. Under site improvement, slippage in projects moves funds to 2026 and beyond. Fencing, guardrails, lights, signs, retaining walls, and the bridge walkway are all projects that have either shifted completely or partly from 2025 to 2026. So you can see we underspent in 25, and looks like we're increasing spending in 2026, but it's really just shifting it from one year to the next. Under building exteriors, the front porch work and art review slipped into 2025. So you notice it looks like we spent more money on front porches. It was a slip of work that we anticipated would be completed in 2024, but slipped into 2025. The other item in that under building exteriors is siding project to replace Gen 1 siding. So this is obviously something that affects many future years. So the initial 2-year investment, you'll see that we're spending more money of $288,000 is offset by some future savings. And this will result in, I think, savings by the time we finish by over $300,000. Also, siding underspending in 2025 of $129,000 that you can see was money that we expected to spend in 2025, but shifted over to 2026. In recreation, we increased the increased cost of pool paver project. The increase of $41,000 is the result of higher than anticipated pricing for the project, in addition to some changes in the scope of the project. Under equipment, and this is something we have not talked a lot about, but on the end of all of the buildings looks like, we call it a doghouse, but it's a little door on the side that gives access to a breaker panel. The building committee is working with our electrical contractor to assess breaker panels in a recommended plan for long-term maintenance. In the short term, Bishop's Forest will be inventorying a small number of replacement breakers to be able to respond quickly if there are any issues in a building. Most people don't even know that those breakers are there. Occasionally, we have an issue with them. Our most recent experience is that these breakers seldom have an issue, but it is something that we want to look at since they're coming up on 40 years old. And lastly, deferred projects. This includes a bunch of smaller projects such as irrigation, equipment, infrastructure upgrades, mailbox replacements, fire hydrants, etc. So there are a bunch of smaller things that we have in our reserve study, and we've gotten to a couple of them, but they're not critical, but we will be taking care of them, and those have shifted out into 2026. So the major project roadmap, which most people who've seen this presentation will recognize. So this is a visual representation of major projects from 2023, the start of the work teed up from the reserve study through 2027. So I like to show this slide to the community to help everyone get a sense of what's been accomplished and made possible with $4 million assessment and the continuing annual contributions to the reserve fund. In almost all cases, the board has delivered major projects as planned on time in either under plan on time and either on or under planned spending. So I think this is a result of good planning. We have a roadmap, which is the reserve study, and project oversight from the building committee and Alyssa have made things really be delivered when we want them to be delivered. We'd have some slips, but they're not major slips. So you'll note that the projects in 2026 and 2027, all of which have been discussed on prior slides. Siding projects will continue their 6-year cycle, but will be very targeted to replace all remaining Gen 1 siding. Deck refurbishment will continue along with cleaning and painting of the siding. As mentioned earlier, paving and Bishop's Forest Drive and Overlook will be the major projects of 2026, along with the broadband upgrades and services for communications, which we are starting to work on. Here's a look at the 10-year reserve plan, which puts it all together, showing the cash impact of the decisions we're making versus the original plan as we set out in 2024. This also gives us a longer-term look at the reserve plan with the adjustments that we covered earlier in the presentation. The top matrix is the recast reserve plan for 2026 with the adjustments we have just reviewed. The middle matrix is the original 2025 reserve plan, and the numbers at the bottom are the change between the two. So just some highlights here. The collection of the special assessment will end as planned in February of 2026, right here. We entered 2026 with a higher plan reserve cash balance of $289,000, which is primarily the result of deferred projects from 2025. The planned reserve contributions assumption continues at an 8% increase each year, according to the 2022 reserve study through 2032, at which time, so up here you can see, it will be reduced to 3% in all future years. You might ask, why is 8%? In 2022, when we were putting together the reserve plan, we came up with a target assessment of $4 million. It could have been higher, but we decided what we would do is use a higher increase for a period of time to not assess more than $4 million. So this will suspend at some point and go down to 3%. The planned reserve, the resulting changes in reserve expenditures ripple through each year. So in some cases, it has a positive effect on cash or a negative. So you can see here, we're continuing to spend more money. Some of those are deferred projects. The other is the new Gen 1 siding. Here's savings due to the Gen 1 siding. And then we begin to see some of the benefits of this new model and the way that we're going to handle the siding. So this is another way of looking at the 10-year reserve fund plan, which focuses on the reserve fund cash balance at the end of each year compared to the 2025 plan. So the blue bars represent the 2026 reserve plan cash balances at the end of each year. The amber bars are the original plan. Bishop's Forest is making an additional investment in years 2026 and 2027 to pursue the Gen 1 siding replacement project. When this project is completed in 2031, it puts Bishop's Forest in a position to begin benefiting from the suspension of the 6-year siding cycles with higher reserve fund balances. So you begin to see the cash balance get greater in these years when we will not be doing the significant siding projects that we have been doing since the early 2000s. So this is the condo fee schedule. I think Marianne mentioned we will be sending out materials at the beginning of next week with all of this information in it. So here's a look at the resulting monthly condominium fee schedule that will go into effect on January 1 of 2026. Your condominium fee is based on your beneficial interest in the trust. If you currently have automatic withdrawal for your condominium fee, the monthly amount will adjust automatically. If you do not, please adjust the method of payment to the new condo fee payment for January 2026. The one thing that we did want to note in this year, so this will only be in 2026, and we mentioned this earlier in the presentation, the current special assessment will conclude with February 2026. For those on automatic withdrawals, your auto pay will be adjusted accordingly. For unit owners who process their own bank drafts, this will require a second adjustment to your monthly payment. So you'll need to modify the amount beginning with March 2026 for common area fees. So I mentioned this throughout this section of the presentation. Bishop's Forest will be updating the reserve study that was conducted and presented to the community in 2022. It will have been almost 4 years since the last reserve study, and things change over time, so it's always healthy to receive a checkup of sorts to make sure that the community is on the right track. Adjustments will include any significant changes that may have occurred during this period of time or incorporate learnings such as a revised siding strategy that we to the model. So this adjustment from Gen 1 siding to Gen 2 is a significant adjustment. We're using the same people we use Advanced Reserve Solutions. We received a fellow from their team back in October who walked the property. Some people, I think, noticed him outside taking photos and writing down information. What they do is they update each component in the reserve study. So they do a physical look at it. They also get information from us as well. We will be working, Alyssa and I will spend a lot of time with the reservist updating historic spending costs from the years that they had in their model 2023 through 2025. We'll also supply them with any quotes we have for planned work in the near term. Then once they've completed their model, they will then work with the board, the whole board, to put together a finalized funding strategy for Bishop's Forest. And we will be presenting probably in the late spring the reserve study. And for those of you who weren't around for the last presentation, it's the principal at Advanced Reserve Solutions will actually present those at the reserve study. It's an independent study, so it's not what we think. It is informed by their experience plus nationwide experience based on spending levels. So we're looking forward to, I think, as someone who has spent time with them before, I think we're in good shape. And we just, like any checkup, you want to wait for the lab results to come in. So we'll be able to talk about those a little later. So now we'll just open it up to questions or comments.
People can either ask questions in the chat, or there's a way to virtually raise your hand and we can ask you to unmute from there.
Jay Goldman has a hand up, I think. Oh, no, he doesn't. I'm sorry. My mistake.
It's okay. Oh, I see. I see a hand, but I don't know who it is. Does anybody
It's
see it?
Suzanne Frank.
Suzanne.
Oh, okay. There she is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, thank you. I thought that was a wonderful presentation, Roy, and I want to thank you and the whole board and Alyssa for all the work that I know went into it. I have a couple of questions. One question is about the number of speed bumps on the main drive. Those of us in Morningside are treated to two extra speed bumps. And I'm wondering if many, many years ago, one of our neighbors who no longer lives here requested the one that's right near the Rotary. And I'm wondering if any attention will be paid to how many speed bumps are on the road after Woodbury. Meaning right now there are two, one right after Woodbury and one as you approach the Rotary. I have a second comment about or question about the speed bumps, which is, has any thought been given to making them more of a, I don't know what the technical term is, maybe it's instead of a speed bump, it would be a speed slope so that when you drive over it, your car does not feel like it's falling apart.
Yes, Suzanne,
Traffic calmer.
we have looked into that and that's definitely something we're considering.
Excellent, thank you. And maybe you'll look at the extra speed bumps for Morningside residents, which we're not charged extra for them. But I personally would like to have just one less.
One
And yes,
At
I'm
the
sure
end.
Roy would agree with me.
At the Rotary.
at the Rotary.
Yes, at the
I'm with
Rotary.
you. I'm with you too.
All right.
It just seems silly, but
We will-
thank you.
We will take that into consideration. Thank you,
Thanks,
Suzanne.
Thank you.
I have a comment. Current inflation rate between 3.1 and 3.6. I think 6.9 fee increase is excessive. And income will not necessarily go up equally.
I would just say we would love to have come in at 3.1 to 3.6, but with the adjustment for insurance, so that I think we went through the major drivers of why we didn't just end up at 3.1. So we're going to be doing a reserve study, which costs money. We're faced with increased costs associated with renegotiating landscape and snow contracts, and a tax accrual that this is funny. Mark had asked me why do we suddenly see a 25,000 tax accrual? It is related to tax that Bishop's Forest owes for interest income in the reserve plan. My assumption was that we would be able to match the 25,000 in the reserve fund. I checked with our accountants, our auditors, and it's an odd thing because accounting usually says you have to recognize all expenses associated with the income. And in this particular case, we could not put the $25,000 in the reserve plan to be absorbed. It has to be in the operating, in our operation expenses. So those expenses together, and I did mention insurance, which is just something that all associations are dealing with. were things that we had to deal with, and along with just regular inflation. So we tried our best, and I actually think we did a pretty good job. We scoured the different expenditures, and I don't think anybody loved where we came in, but I think it was better than what we thought we could get to. So I hope that explains it.
You're right. I don't currently have any other, oh, one just came in. As you approach the new reserve study, is the board considering any new significant projects over the next several years that are not currently considered in the plan?
No,
No,
No, no.
Suzanne?
Me. Again,
I have a
unless-
question. While we're doing all these wonderful fixings around the property, I noticed that and I've mentioned this before, the stone walls at each entrance to each village, some of them are in worse shape than others. Today I noticed that Wayside even had a little pile of stones at the bottom of the wall where they seem to be falling off the wall and accumulating in a pile. And as you look at each wall, they seem to be in various states of impending decrepitude, I'll call it. The corners are falling off. They look like they need to be washed. I mean, we're doing all this work on the property in the hardscape, and I'm wondering if there's some way to make these little walls at the entrances look cleaned up and not falling down.
Yeah, so I think that will
That's
go
my
hand in hand with our retaining wall endeavor, which we do plan to work more on in 2026.
Okay.
I know they're not
Good.
necessarily retaining walls, but it's retaining walls, fences,
yeah,
that kind of structure that we will be focusing on more in 2026.
Yeah, I don't think they're a retaining wall. They're just like a little.
Oh.
right. She just said that they're included in that category. It's just
Okay.
that they're not retaining walls.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Okay,
okay.
All right, I don't see anything
I
coming in.
guess we're through.
I would accept a motion to adjourn then.
All right, yep, I will make a motion to adjourn, but I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us tonight because it's not always fun to listen to numbers, but I think it gives you some insight into the things that we do have planned. And I think I think it's good news for the community. I think we're doing a great job. So thank you.
Before we adjourn, are we approving the budget?
Yeah, like we should, let's
Yeah,
just go
there
ahead
should
and
be
take
a
vote for
motion
that.
to approve it, correct? Yep.
Yep. I will make a motion to approve the 2026 budget as presented.
Second.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay,
All right.
hearing none.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a
Thank you
great
all. Thank you,
evening.
Mary Ann, for joining.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Aye.